Would you like to solve a mystery with me? I bet you would. Well, we are here in the tiny little village of Hincaster. And in the centre of it, on the sign here, it tells us the name is of Roman origin, although no trace of a fort or encampment has ever been found. You will know that whenever we see caster in a place name, it means there were once Roman remains here. And the earliest English are telling us that with the use of that word. Not too far south of Hincaster, we have Lancaster, which of course is famously a Roman fort and civilian settlement. And there we have visible signs of the Roman presence still to this day. But at Hincaster, for centuries, they've been looking for the Roman remains and they've never found them. Now, this, of course, varies in different parts of the country. You may be more familiar with it in its Chester form, as in Ribchester, Manchester, and Chester. But here it is Caster, as in Lancaster and Muncaster. Back in the 1970s, they perhaps got close to finding Roman Hincaster, but they didn't succeed. Well, here we are in 2025, and I think I have. So join me in a heat wave as we try to find Roman Hincaster. I've started recording today unfeasibly early because of this heat wave. That will explain the whispering in the first segment. I was in the village there. I'm all right now, I'm out in the sticks. What's this? Ah, fairy house. We'll leave that be. The early English settlers used the Latin word castrum when they settled on or near visible Roman remains. And thus today we have Hincaster, Lancaster. A bit further south from here, you get Manchester, Ribchester, and Chester. And apparently that difference is because in areas such as this where I am today, where the Norse settled, they couldn't pronounce the ch sound, so it became caster here. I thought the Vikings were meant to be hard. They couldn't even say ch. I shouldn't, of course, be using the term Vikings anymore. That is considered derogatory, as indeed are the words Anglo-Saxon, and that's why I am referring to the early English in this video. So what those early English settlers found when they got here was they found some Roman ruins with a population of hens, and thus Hincaster. This is how it was spelt at the time of Doomsday, and it would have been well established by then, possibly going back centuries. There are, of course, other variations on Castor and Chester, not least of all Caster in East Anglia. They do things differently there. What did you think of my evocative rendering of the Roman ruins at Hincaster, used as a hen coop in the dark early medieval ages? I know the hens were a bit big. Looking down on Hincaster today, you can see it is not a very big place, but if we effectively strip away the 20th century housing stock and compare the current map to the same view back in the 1800s, you can see it was really tiny then. So it is very difficult to say where exactly the Hincaster of the Doomsday Book period, let alone the centuries before that, where it actually was. No church at Hincaster perhaps indicates the level of obscurity this place slipped into in its post-Roman life. You'll see on this 1800s OS map the site of a former tithe barn. I've been unable to identify how old they think that was. On the same map, you'll see that the current location of the village is indicated as a British encampment. So back then they thought this was the place where the Roman whatever once stood. But weirdly, on this 1808 map of the county, you'll see tiny little Hincaster is marked. And in 1770, you'll see it's referred to as Hincaster Green and does appear to be slightly south of the current location. Let's look at Hincaster in its wider landscape. About 20 miles south from there, we have this. Let's call it Colunium. Sadly, still litter strewn, as you can see. But there was a Roman fort built here during the Flavian period, so 1st century. We're looking at a later bathhouse here. And then over in the far side of the compound, you'll see the Wherry Wall. You'll know that I've not been very well. Getting better now, thanks for all the nice wishes. But that is the sole surviving fragment of a later rebuild of the fort. I think about 343, something like that. Up to the 18th century, there was a lot more to see. There are reports of that Wherry Wall being torn down at that time. But this was an important place. And you'll recall with the Saxon shore forts in the 4th century being developed along the eastern coast of the country to ward off the Saxons, this later rebuild here at Lancaster was apparently about warding off the threat from the Irish Sea, the threat from Irish pirates. And I know it's wrong, but for some reason I find the idea of Irish pirates very funny. I'm going to get into a lot of trouble about that, aren't I? I always feel a little bit sad when I visit this site. While I've been here today on an extremely hot day, I'm filming this out of sequence, thus this cut on my leg happened for you later on, and it's about 30 degrees now. I'll be talking about lower temperatures and moaning about those later on in the video. But while I've been here, 4 lots of people have seen the manky old sign and wandered down and had a look. I feel as though it's a place that could really warrant some more care and attention. Anyhow, we're now going to head about 22, 23 miles north of here. I was going to do a gag about the good thing with Lancaster being all the benches in the shade, but it appears they've now all been removed. They really do want to keep you moving. And then we get to that, just over the river there, are the low embankments of Watercrook Roman Fort, a place of many supposed names. It's just outside modern-day Kendal. Now that I would say is around about 3 or 4 miles from Hincaster. So one of the questions that we have is why would there be 2 forts so close together? And this one was built early, probably around about 90 AD, and was in use till around about sort of 279, 280, something like that, with later coins found in there as well, suggesting some form of continuity. So what would there have been just down the road at Hincaster? And was there even a road? Whilst out filming the Watercrook sequence, which also included the bit at the museum in Kendal, I don't know if you've seen that yet in the sequence, something fundamentally changed. So I'm going to throw that into Pedant's Corner this week, I think, along with 2 typos, and I'll probably say at least 1 name wrong. So plenty of food for all you pedants this week. One of the things you learn doing this is not about how fast you can get around with the power of editing. It's you can't beat visiting the actual location. When I stood on the other side of the river, looking across at the fort here, where there's no public rights of way, I could see people walking round it. And I asked a chap, and he said that, yeah, there's a sort of a permissive path, not marked at all. And I've come round, and there it is. You really aren't going to be able to see it, and we'll be totally relying on the drone for these shots. It only really shows up from above, but there, a little self-indulgent treat for me. I'll take you over the rampart for all the good that it will do. Very low. I don't know if it helps if I stand at the end of this tumbled down wall and shoot along it. Can you see the raised embankment there? I am really pleased with that, to be honest. From what I'd read and what I understood, although it shows up well in the LiDAR, I didn't think you could see the fort at all here, apart from perhaps up above, which I've now confirmed that you can. But 100 years or so ago, it was a different picture here. There was a lot more to see. And over there in Watercrook Farm, there was still part of the Roman bathhouse, which would have been outside in the civilian settlement outside the fort to the, what would it be, eastern side of the fort. But sadly, that has disappeared, no doubt for some form of silage container or something like that. About 12 miles east of Hincaster, there is another one, another Caster without any sign of Roman remains. But there is something different about Casterton, and I'm not talking about the fact that the English decided to put the Caster at the front. Here we have a 100% verified Roman road, the road from Ribchester to Low Borrowbridge. Oh, by the way, how are you getting on, pedants? Have you found it yet? I'll give you a clue. It's continuity based. Viewers in Australia and America aren't going to believe these temperatures that I'm up against today. You'd struggle with that, wouldn't you? About 15 miles northeast of Hincaster, we have another Roman fort, the Roman fort that sits in the Loon Gorge, just south of T-Bay. It must be the luckiest Roman fort in the country. It narrowly survived the coming of the railway and then the coming of the motorway. But there it is, and I think it may play a part in our story as well. Finally, heading west from Watercrook, we get to Ambleside Fort, let's call it Galava, and that's important for various reasons, but we're focused on two here. One, it provides access to the road via Hardknott Fort out to the coastal fort of, let's call it Glanoventa, and two, the road from Watercrook to Ambleside is our only fully attested one in this target area. I always struggle with this. The Roman Roads Research Association proposed that the old A6 largely marks the Roman road from Lancaster to Watercrook, namely that it stays west of the River Kent. Now, interestingly, where I'm walking now would have been on the other side of the river in Roman times, we think. I'll show you with some sort of overlay how they think the two roads join to the west of the river. But with the civilian settlement at Watercrook on the eastern side, there was a later one sort of on the northern side, but they think that was largely industrial. So I think for most of the life of the civilian settlement, that was on the eastern side. So it leads you to think that there must have been a road coming into this fort from that side. Surely there must have been. Part of their argument runs that it fits with Leyland's itinerary in 1540, and it's hard not to recognise his very pretty river. Don't think he was actually from Somerset, as he approaches Milnthorpe, but it does seem that he leaves the route there and possibly shows us another lost Roman road heading east of Borrowbridge to join the putative Roman road from the fort at Burrow in Lancashire up to Watercrook as well, loosely the A65. Our key section of the proposed A6 route does, however, run very straight near Hincaster. Just as a quick aside, that the A6 may be following the Roman line from Lancaster to Watercrook. Here at Heversham, I'm going to say Heversham, we have in the church this, a fantastic, what we would have called Anglo-Saxon cross. It dates to the 9th century, so it tells us that 400 years after the end of the Roman period, people were travelling along this route, and long before this church was built, they were erecting things like this. We should also mention another sketchy road proposed between Low Borrowbridge Fort to Watercrook. A 19th century antiquarian, Richard Ferguson, places the Lancaster to Watercrook Roman road here, aligning sections of country roads, basically. But to me, that seems to be going too far out east, and if it is Roman, more likely heading to Low Borrowbridge. In the 1970s, these lanes were suggested as a route heading from Lancaster to Watercrook on the east side of the river, and given that there was a vicus on that side, it seems quite plausible to me. Incidentally, I tried to drive a section of that where some git had removed the road closed sign, so don't try this at home. However, if we are looking at another Lancaster to Watercrook route here, it passes close to modern day Hincaster and helps later with my proposed Roman site. All highly sketchy then and not backed up by LiDAR, but there must have been at least one road linking Lancaster to Watercrook, and Hincaster is close to that. We also looked at these to add to the confusion, and no trace of a name nor a location for Hincaster there. Many of the locations we've mentioned thus far have been proposed as the evocative alone over the years. Maybe that's what Hincaster was. ... I do hope you'll forgive me lurking around in the shade today like this. At 10 o'clock this morning, it was already 25 degrees. It's 11:30 now, it's probably 26. Think about that. I've come over to Hincaster Hall, just outside the current village, and I'm looking at the land to the south of that, because through the 19th century, right up to the 1970s in fact, that was considered to be the most likely area where our Roman whatever was based. Now, if you have a look at the LiDAR, I've scanned that. I can't see anything there at all. Now, since the 1970s, as we're going to see, the area of focus has moved effectively north of the current village, and we'll get to that in due course. We do have to consider on searches like this, however, that the Roman remains may be under Hincaster Hall here. We have a great example of that not too far away over the border in Lancashire at Burrow, where a fine, resplendent, well, series of houses have been built effectively onto the fort platform, even utilising the Roman road as the elegant driveway to the fort. It may be under the current village itself of Hincaster. Like all good antiquarians, whatever the weather, I always have a copy of Pevsner in my pocket. And that tells me that Hincaster Hall dates back to the 16th century, so 1500s basically. That doesn't mean that there couldn't have been something there beforehand. But for this exercise today, our investigation, we're ruling that out as the location of our Roman remains. We're ruling out the modern day village, and we're ruling out the area to the south of the village. And interestingly, stood on top of the hill next to Hincaster Hall, I can look due north and I can see the location of where I think I've found it. Just to put some context on that, the village is there and our location is somewhere over here. So it's not far from modern day Hincaster at all. Try not to get stung. I remember these, don't you? Now, wasn't there a thing that you used to do when you were kids? Was it that you squeezed it, and if it popped out, then the girlfriend that you loved would agree to love you back? Let's give it a go. She loves me. They all wanted me to be their boyfriend. They can't have me. I've got Mrs. WC21 UK Productions Limited. And trust me, when you've got a wife as good as that, you don't need any other. Hello, darling. Now, I just want to say, if any of you try anything like this at home, make sure you bring plenty of water. When you're dealing with these sorts of temperatures as an antiquarian, you need to keep yourself dehydrated or you could go quite mad. Now, one of the things that Hincaster is well known for is this, the Hincaster Canal Tunnel. But don't worry, I'm not ready yet to go into industrial archaeology. But the hill that this runs through, Tunnel Hill, plays a part in our story. And you know me, I want to tell you a story. So I'm a real chicken. I've yomped up Tunnel Hill, trying to avoid going through a field of cows. But I can't get through. There's a tunnel rather than a gate into a field, as I'd hoped, so I'm just going to have to be brave. What is it they say? Discretion is the better part of valour and all that. So I've come round to the other end of the footpath and come in this way. I'm not frightened of cows, obviously. I'm thinking about the heat. Discarded the hat as well. Now, this area behind me here is what we're going to be looking at. So, in the 1970s, they built a dual carriageway, the A590, that opened in 1971. And some diligent workmen spotted some Roman-looking pottery in one of the cuttings, the spoil heaps that came out of one of the cuttings, which is just over there. I'll show you that so you can see exactly. We know exactly where it was due to the diligence of antiquarian reporting at the time. So that's down there. I'm looking over the next rise over here. That prompted me to look at the LiDAR, and this is what I found. I then sent that LiDAR, which is the standard National Library of Scotland LiDAR, off to our good friend Phil Barrett. He enhanced it and that is what I'm going to show you in a bit. After the workmen's finds, they had a little wander around these fields and some more turned up. It was Samian ware. So on the off chance, the other day I went off to Kendal Museum to see if they had any of those finds on display. Unfortunately not. All the Samian ware there was from Watercrook Fort, which I guess makes sense. However, if you bear with me, I can show you a breakdown of that Samian ware as some sort of overlay. And it's all 2nd century. Now, the key thing with this Samian ware is that it is considered too good a quality to relate to any form of farmstead, a Romano-British farmstead in this area. It points towards military occupation here, or even, seductively, because we don't have those here, a villa. Although they were unable to identify any earthworks out here in the 1970s, they'd shifted the focus from the south of the current village of Hincaster, and they believed that somewhere between Tunnel Hill and Sellet Hill, in this sort of trough, is where the Roman remains were likely to be. And that is where I think I have found them. It is really nicely close to the current Hincaster village. Obviously, these things do move around over that length of time a little bit, but it's pretty damn close. By the way, I got very excited here when I saw these stones over in the hedgerow. Thought I had something megalithic, but I suspect that's the old style. Now, I think the final thing to point out whilst I'm up here sweltering is that, so we've got our find is over here in the trough. Over there, and I'll aid this with some sort of overlay, we have Wellhead Lane. Now, back in the 1970s, when they were looking out here, there was a belief that Wellhead Lane was the possible Roman road from Hincaster to Watercrook Fort. In fact, they actually think that it went south from Hincaster to Lancaster. Just spotted some cows over there, blissfully unaware, but cows are blissfully unaware of everything, aren't they? Blissfully unaware that they may be stood within the remains of a long-lost Roman something. What is it? Is it a marching camp from the initial incursion into this area? Is it a fort, but it's so close to Watercrook? Is it a villa, but we don't have villas up here? You know, if it's a marching camp from that 1st century, why has it got Samian ware that spans the whole of the 2nd century? It's all a massive mystery. Anyhow, without further ado, let's take a look at my find. I'll talk you through what I think we can see, and we can talk about what it might be. Fundamentally, it's this curve and then the line extending up the hill, a very Roman looking curve, and unlike anything else I can find in this LiDAR. It doesn't show at all on the ground, but we do have this stain stroke bulge at the top of the field and within the area defined by the LiDAR. The square feature opposite, and there are others, I'm less sure about. Lots of medieval history in this farmed landscape. These may have been thrown up by the proper medieval plough, and you can see the ridge and furrow is creating these boundaries. It's not a fort, and surprise, it's not a villa. It's military. Possibly a marching camp, but I'm thinking signal station, a chain of signals between Watercrook and Lancaster, and quite nice if it is that, because it makes it unnecessary for Wellhead's Lane to represent a major Roman road. The Samian suggests perhaps a bit more than that, but this is where I'd put my trench, and this is where I think you'll find the Roman origin of Hincaster. Useful earthworks in which to keep the hens later on, and the fact modern-day Hincaster is half a mile south doesn't worry me. It's not uncommon for the early English to settle near, but not in Roman ruins, and plenty of time during the proper medieval period for changes in what has clearly been a constantly remodelled landscape. By the way, how are you pedants getting on? Spotted it yet? Get those timestamps ready. Now, just a few weeks ago, I was stood at that gate over there, the other side of this lay-by, reporting on Leven's Brow. And it was actually while I was in this area that I spotted Hincaster and thought, hang on a minute, that must be Roman. Anyhow, we have a curveball for you, and it's somewhere over there. When I sent my LiDAR off to Phil Barrett, and sorry, Phil, if I called you Phil Barnett earlier, I'm not going to go back and film it again, it's too hot. He's got a discovery over there. And if you look at the LiDAR, it shows up very clearly. And again, it looks like a Roman fort or encampment of some kind. Once again, very close to Watercrook. It's a little bit further away from Hincaster than my find, but there seems to be something there. You know, was something going on in this area that we don't know and don't understand? Oh, I need more water. Three possible considerations then for all of this apparent military activity. 1, early subjugation in a populated area. 2, access to an important route out to the coast. 3, adapting later once the native threat recedes. Remember Irish pirates. And when you've got no professional status, influence or money, LiDAR is cool. As a treat for the outro, I have brought you to one of my favourite stretches of abandoned Roman road. I'll walk down the side there so you can see the Aga profile of it. The modern road is just down there. This has been out of use, well, probably out of use for absolute centuries. Might have even gone out of use during the Roman period. It is the Ribchester to Low Borrowbridge road, so it takes us up to that fort that we looked at earlier, and that I have proposed there may possibly be a road link between that and Hincaster. I look forward to reading in the comments what you think about what I have discovered. Clearly, I don't have any resources to go and dig it all up, but I think I've taken it to a point where there's a strong case that that is where the Castrum of Hincaster is. Now, due to popular demand, there isn't going to be a Jim Murray joke this week. I wish you'd have more sympathy for 1970s gag writers. Work is not easy to come by for them, but you've asked me to give that a break. So I will just thank our members. I will ask those of you who don't subscribe to this channel, please subscribe. It really helps, and it is free. And I'll see you next week for another investigation.